Now Rza is one of the greatest minds in hip hop, and he was behind arguably the greatest hip hop group of all time. And also Rza was important to hip hop philosophy, to hip hop economy, to the spirituality of producing, and ultimately to the hip hop culture. Because Rza has given a great contribution. So let's tell this story further. Rza has many different titles: musician, producer, rapper, filmmaker, actor, author, etc. He also has amazing video interviews. Check out Montreality, for example. And another example is the Lex Fridman interview where he plays a game of chess. It's a very compelling experience, and an interesting side note, the Montreality interview brought me back memories to the 12 Jewels. Now a huge part of Rza's legacy is creating the rap group Wu Tang Clan, which was a creative fusion of hip hop, chess, kung fu, and the voice of Staten Island. And Wu Tang Clan was not Rza's first punch at the music industry, but it was the most effective. And Rza has evolved and has now entered the world of filmmaking. So let's increase our understanding and dive into this. The album 36 Chambers illustrated the amazing vision of Rza. As stated previously, Wu Tang Clan was a combination of hip hop, chess, and kung fu, with 9 deadly MCs. And there was nothing like this at the time. The beats contained kung fu dialogue, soulful samples, and one of the best snares in hip hop history. Check the song Bring the Ruckers for reference. Also, the album contained one of the best acronyms of all time, CREAM, which stood for Cash Rules Everything Around Me. This was an acronym that referred to capitalism that we could all understand. And think of this, we had the juxtaposition of chess and the streets. Was this juxtaposition ever done before? I think not. And Where Is My Killer Tape? That was a classic introduction. And Rza's dialogue on Can It Be So Simple was a classic introduction. And my favourite song on the album, The Mystery of Chess Boxing, again was a classic introduction from the movie sample to You God's verse. This was the perfect auditory sword strike. 36 Chambers to me was an amazing piece of art, and it is recognised as one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. Wu-Tang Forever had a major impact on the UK. But first let's backtrack. Now Wu-Tang Forever was a double CD, and the lyrical literature on this album was way ahead of its time. Released in 1997, the I Bomb Atomically Socrates Philosophies verse from Inspector Deck is considered one of the greatest verses of all time. On top of that, the song Impossible also contained some of the greatest verses I have ever heard. You had Rza's fusion of the 5 elements, which was breathtaking, and then you had Ghostface's Closure, a reference to a friend being shot and killed, and this captured the dark elements of the streets. Now Wu-Tang Forever was an album, as previously stated, that had a major impact in the UK. Now the British rapper Akala, who is also an entrepreneur and book author, documents this impact in a DJ Vlad interview. And on Lex Fridman's podcast, Rza states the song Sun Shower answers 25% of life's questions. It's a subjective statement, but you get the sentiment. And in my opinion, this was lyrically a standout album for Rza. And the Fusion of 5 Elements verse had a massive influence on me. To me, this was like Shakespeare lyricism, and this album had commercial success, but it was not commercial. Those die-hard Wu fans will understand that statement. Now, Rza developed an alter ego called Bobby Digital, and he released many albums under this alter ego. And before we go any further, let me tell you about my favorite lyric on the Bobby Digital album, which is from the song NYC Everything. And the lyric is actually from Method Man, and it goes something like this, quote, "When the fish burn, I burn rubber, because like Larry, I'm not an easy lover," end of quote. Now this is playing on the actor's name, Lawrence Fishburne. Fishburne, Larry, not an easy lover, get it? So the term Fishburne has a double connotation, and Rza has referred to this lyric in an interview as an awkward metaphor. Now Bobby Digital also indicates Rza's beat transition, going from heavy sample rhythms to incorporating synthesizers and digital instrumentation. And according to Rza, 16 to 17 keyboards were used for this album. It was the literal transition going from analog to digital. And the going digital was also a double entendre, a metaphor to embracing modern technology and a metaphor to being more progressive in the culture. Now the Wu-Tang business can be divided into various elements. So you have the revenue from the albums, you have the big revenue from shows, you have books, you had the clothing line, you had the movie revenue, and then you had the most expensive single album that was ever sold. So let's talk album sales. So Wu-Tang Forever, released in 1997, sold over 6 million copies. You had 36 Chambers, released in 1993, which sold over 3 million records. And then you had the W, released in 2000, which sold 1.3 million records. And then you have a variety of Wu-Tang affiliated recording labels. Now let's go to the film chamber and discuss what films grossed that were affiliated with Rza. Let's give 3 examples. The film The Man with the Iron Fist made 20.5 million at the box office. Jim Jarmusch's Coffee and Cigarette, a film starring Rza, made 7.9 million. And Ghost Dog, a film where Rza provided the score, generated 9.3 million. And let's not forget the clothing line. Allegedly, Wu Wear was making at one point $25 million a year. From what I understand, Rza was mentored by Quentin Tarantino. And yes, that Quentin Tarantino, the one that made Pulp Fiction. Allegedly, they had a film buff battle on who knows more about kung fu flicks, and their relationship was important to Rza's evolution in the film industry. This, I assume, led to scoring Kill Bill, a film that received high praise and was a commercial success. And Rza also had a professional relationship with film director Jim Jarmusch. The music to the film Ghost Dog, which was directed by Jim Jarmusch, was done by the Rza. And a little side note, on Mass Appeal, Jim Jarmusch tells a story of Rza and ODB, which is quite hilarious. Rest in peace, ODB. And Rza also starred in Jim Jarmusch's film The Dead Don't Die, and that was a fun horror comedy featuring none other than Bill Murray. And Rza's first featured debut was The Man with the Iron Fists, and Rza continues to be involved in the film universe. So let's conclude with the following. Rza was an amazing hip-hop producer. His 36 Chambers album was considered one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. and for his beat-making accomplishments, check out Bring the Pain, Ice Cream and Triumph. But more than that, Rza was to me a creative genius, and his vision is just unmatched, particularly within the hip-hop context. And the evidence of this is Wu Tang Clan, which is a combination of chess, kung fu, the streets, and the hidden voices of Shaolin. And his creative intellect is also evidenced by his successful transition into the movie universe. And this movie transition becomes even more unsurprising considering he was in the company of Jarmusch and Quentin Tarantino. And Rza to this day is still making an impact in the movie industry. And to me, in the hip hop jungle, Rza was creatively ahead of his time, a lion of creative talent that is unmatched in the hip hop universe. Okay, this is the epilogue. Now, when talking about 36 Chambers, I should have mentioned the song Protect Your Neck. This is another great track on 36 Chambers, and of course, this is another favourite. Also, I did not mention Gravediggers. This was a collective of Prince Paul, Too Poetic, The Gatekeeper, and of course Rza. Now, the Gravediggers song, Diary of a Madman, is a madness, and the first album pioneered the horrorcore genre of hip hop. The important reference here is Rza's involvement in this group that created some great hip hop music. Also, under the business empire, Wu Tang have a collection of Wu recording labels, and I assume these labels would have some type of hierarchical structure. And with regards to production style and technology, Rza used the SP1200, the Ensoniq EPS, the Ensoniq EPS 16 Plus, and the ASR 10. Additional to this, Rza would have used an MPC drum machine, which is an important symbol of hip hop. And Rza is an extremely important part of hip hop, a definite king in the hip hop universe.